Homage to fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni. Homage to wisdom. Warrior Manjushri, homage to all lineage benevolent masters. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in a million eons. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, generate supreme bodhicitta. Now let us continue studying the words of my perfect teacher. In the previous class, I also told everyone about this book. If we can truly keep it with us throughout our lifetime, that would be best, if some among you here make such an aspiration. I hope you silently make this vow. It's actually not impossible to achieve. Even if you can't read it, carrying it with you often will naturally lead to reading. Respecting this Dharma text is very important. In this way, for your personal practice, your cultivation should become complete, because all the content within is entirely useful for our liberation and extremely important. Every sentence has no need for selective acceptance or rejection. It's not like this part is useful to us while that part is not. It's like when eating, I see some people in the cities when they eat fish, they only eat some parts inside and throw away other parts on the plate, right? Many of you have eaten fish, but I have not. When eating fish, they eat some of the flesh and keep spitting out parts they don't eat. So if we use some parts of the preliminaries and not others, throwing them away like fish bones, we can also make such choices. But I believe that every word, every sentence, every section, every paragraph, every chapter is extremely beneficial for our liberation and our character. So we have no reason not to rely on such a Dharma text. Actually, the Preliminaries also mentions later that this is a teacher without anger if you rely on a teacher asking him today and tomorrow. Sometimes he's not happy, sometimes he's in a bad mood, sometimes he's particularly busy. Sometimes you can't find the teacher, no matter how hard you look. Sometimes even when you find him, he's unwilling to teach you. Sometimes the teacher doesn't know how to explain. Sometimes it's inconvenient. Sometimes the teacher has various other reasons. So for us to find another teacher and constantly ask questions every day is not so easy. But a Dharma text is truly a teacher without anger, without hatred. You can open it any time to look, and it will remind you of a principle. It provides you with excellent, convenient methods for practice. So we should rely on such teachings for a long time. Actually, in a person's lifetime, there should be one or two treatises that have a great impact on him. I once saw someone, I forget who, a great master from the Gelug school. He said that throughout his life he studied and researched all the sutras, treatises, and tantras of both exoteric and esoteric teachings. In the end, he believed that all exoteric and esoteric teachings were all elaborated for the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. He said this with great emotion. I think if a person makes the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment their true lifelong companion book, then he too will feel this way. I once saw a tulku from Ngawa prefecture when he went to India. He always carried it with him. Even when encountering the greatest difficulties, he always carried this book. Similarly, I think our current book, The Words of My Perfect Teacher, if one studies it long-term, not just for a day or two. Look at Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. He was a person of such wisdom. Although I had met him before in New Delhi, the capital of India, I met him at that time, and also in Thimphu, the capital of Bhutan. I met him there too. He was truly extraordinary. A while ago, a tulku who returned from India also said when Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche gave empowerments, sometimes the empowerment texts couldn't found. He could recite everything from memory and continue directly. Previously, when I was at Sogyal Rinpoche's center, I watched one of his DVDs. At that time, there weren't many in China autumn of 1993. At that time, I was particularly amazed. The Dharma he taught was all eloquent and fluent. All the scriptural quotations flowed out naturally. If such a person reads several pages of the Preliminaries every day, I think we ordinary people with heavy karma, whose minds often cannot correspond with the Dharma, what reason do we have not to read it? These predecessors, great masters, valued these Dharma texts so highly and were so diligent, yet often we ordinary beings bound by everything, whose minds are filled with greed, anger, and ignorance. Such ordinary beings often think highly of ourselves, that our practice is quite good. thinking that just seeking some high teachings is already good enough. Some people don't even have the thought of seeking high teachings. So, as practitioners, we should seek what our profession is. We often see farmers in the fields. Their profession is agriculture. On the plateau, we often see some herders. What is their profession? It's herding. And in our monasteries, many monks with shaved heads. What is the profession of monks? It is practice. Especially Mahayana monks should liberate beings based on maintaining pure precepts. And in cities or in our monasteries, there are many lay practitioners who have generated Mahayana Bodhicitta and taken refuge in the three jewels. What is their responsibility? They should also diligently study and practice the Dharma and benefit limitless beings as much as possible. This is each person's responsibility. We should not abandon all our responsibilities and duties and then live in a daze every day doing nothing but eating and sleeping. I think this is unreasonable, so everyone should normally have 1 or 2 Dharma texts to regularly examine, measure, and analyze your own shortcomings or merits. This aspect is very important. I remember we had an old Khenpo named Khenpo Legshed who was from our monastery. When he discussed with us this summer, I asked him about his previous situation of relying on spiritual teachers. What was the deepest impression in his memory? He had once relied on Lama Yukok for about 10 days. What did Lama Yukok tell him then? Throughout his lifetime, he had read the words of my perfect teacher at least more than 100 times. Because he was also a great master of his generation, many practitioners in Tibetan areas knew everything about him. He should have been truly extraordinary. When Guru Rinpoche was alive, he often mentioned his name. It seems His Holiness had also received some simple teachings under him, so they valued the preliminary practices and these teachings so highly. And how should we people now treat these teachings? We don't even look at them. Some people might have heard them only once or twice in their lifetime thinking, it's quite good, I've already received the transmission. Previously, when I was in Shimen, I was translating the White Lotus for more than 110 days. It seemed no one knew I hid in the 174 hospital and several other places, staying there continuously, living a very free and carefree life in the manner of a hermit practitioner. Later, once when I went to Namputyo Temple, a lay practitioner recognized me. After being recognized, there was no choice but to make it public. At that time, he invited me to a vegetarian restaurant. It seems I mentioned this in my footprints on the journey. He said at that time he had already read it 5 or 6 times at that time. I remember quite clearly. He said Patrul Rinpoche had previously received this teaching more than 25 times from his root guru, let alone people like us. He was a university professor, yet he had already read it about 5 or 6 times. The more he read, the more energetic he became, feeling more blessed in his mind stream. So, the words of my perfect teacher indeed has such function and power, such blessings. I hope everyone present will not regard it as just preliminary practices, just particularly simple teachings, thinking that many stories inside should be very clear to me. If you approach it with such an attitude and mentality of disdain, I think it's unreasonable. Therefore, I repeatedly hope that in the preliminaries, every story, every scriptural quotation, every paragraph of text should all be absorbed into your heart, all clearly and vividly manifested. In this way, your future practice should be excellent. Otherwise, sometimes we keep Dharma texts in our study rooms while there's a particularly vast distance between our mind stream and the Dharma. The Kadampa tradition has many particularly sharp, penetrating teachings in this regard. Therefore, everyone present who listens to Dharma teachings daily should somewhat tame the afflictions of your own mind stream. Atisha also said, if it can tame the afflictions of your mind stream, this is Dharma. If it cannot tame them, it's not called Dharma. So for such Dharma, if you have no confidence, no interest, you won't necessarily integrate every principle within into your heart. Therefore, through your correct understanding and diligent practice, these behaviors cannot be separated. Now let us continue studying. First, we use wisdom to examine the Guru. This refers to before establishing a connection for empowerments and teachings, one must examine carefully if truly a Guru who possesses the qualifications we should follow, as mentioned before, respectfully and properly rely on him through the 3 ways of pleasing. If he doesn't possess the qualifications, Through the process of examination, this guru absolutely will not possess any qualifications, then it's best not to rely on him. Once you have already relied on a guru, regardless of his behavior, you must regard it all as excellent view, everything as merit, generate faith, and observe with pure perception. So once you have relied on him, you cannot constantly examine. Examining in this way actually brings very great faults. Sometimes, due to one's impure mind and vision, the guru might have some intentional behaviors and words, various forms of training beings, when not only do you not generate faith, but instead generate wrong views. You must strive to confess, otherwise you too will have great faults. If evil thoughts arise, then the consequences are unimaginable. In other words, endless troubles. If we first rely on someone, and after relying, then slander and defame, then this brings very great negative consequences. Mipham Rinpoche also said in The Just King Buddha said, if one is disrespectful to a guru who has given even just one sentence of Dharma for 100 lifetimes, continuously one becomes a dog, then is reborn among inferior species. Not to mention gurus who give major empowerments and teachings, even if you have heard more than one sentence of Dharma teachings after you have listened. If you don't regard him as a true Dharma teacher or guru and slander him, then in the next life you will be reborn as a dog for 100 lifetimes. And after the animal body, you must continuously be reborn among beggars, prostitutes, and other inferior beings. So we should approach the Dharma with an attitude of reverence and should generate joy and respect toward all Dharma teaching gurus. In the world, we also say, one day as teacher, lifelong as father. There should be such a saying. Actually, even worldly teachers who have taught you just one class, we should also regard as teachers. I have a teacher who considers herself and often tells others, I am his teacher. But actually, in my clear memory, she only taught one class. And I remember it was one winter outside our classroom, snow was falling continuously. At that time, our teacher went out. When they went out at that time, they all rode horses. It was snowing heavily then, and they didn't return, so she substituted and taught our class one math lesson. The math at that time was infinite recurring decimals, 10 divided by 3 with 333 continuing endlessly. But later, she also considered herself my teacher and often said so. I had no choice but to acknowledge, yes, 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 my teacher. Some teachers' lessons don't leave deep impressions, but some teachers, even after just one class, remain quite clear even after 10, 20, or 30 years. So I think we worldly people often have such experiences. Everyone present might also have this. For example, you might now be a university professor. But some elementary school teachers who taught you before, actually some worldly people who don't know gratitude, simply ignore them, because now I've become a university professor, while my former teacher is still just an elementary school teacher. If I tell others he is my teacher, I might feel embarrassed they won't acknowledge it, but actually they should. Once Khenpo Tsultrim Lodro and I went to a family's house to recite sutras. We saw an elderly woman who wasn't in good health. Khenpo Tsultrim Lodro said, "This is my teacher." She was a bit embarrassed. Yes, your teacher is very wise, because when the Khenpo was very young, she had been an elementary school teacher, but since the Khenpo brought it up himself, she was certainly embarrassed. Now, if someone said she was his teacher, she probably never told anyone, only the Khenpo pointed it out himself. So I think in our worldly life, whether one has wisdom or not, we should respect our teachers and they deserve our gratitude. Then for transcendent Dharma, the kindness of Dharma that surpasses the worldly, everyone should know kindness and repay kindness at the same time. Because in Buddhism, it's different from this. After truly relying on someone's so-called reliance is not just verbal commitment, but after establishing such connections through teachings, empowerments, or pith instructions, even if some behaviors are not easily acceptable, you cannot defame. I saw in the biographies of eminent monks that Kumarajiva was translating with them. In Chinese history, the Translation Academy should have been quite large. Sometimes it said 800 people gathered together continuously like this. But later, because from Kumarajiva's biography we can see his entire lifestyle was also quite complex, at that time the kingdom of Kucha also considered him a national treasure, Later, there was a king during the northern and southern dynasties period. He launched a war and captured Kumarajiva after capturing him. It seems during this king's reign, his Dharma propagation activities were not very extensive. Later, during Emperor Yaoxing's time, he had him establish a translation institute, but they felt he was particularly intelligent. Various historical accounts are all different. Some say Kumarajiva was extremely intelligent, therefore he should have descendants. Otherwise, like the perspective of worldly people now, they felt it would be a pity. Later, Emperor Yaoxing specially found 10 beautiful women and forcibly made him return to lay life. During the process of returning to lay life, later, some biographies say he used needles to directly consume. Many disciples had this when learning some of his behaviors. Some biographies say after he later enjoyed these beautiful women, he did not stay with the monastic community. When he taught sutras, he often had one sentence, like a lotus flower born from foul mud, but take the lotus flower, do not take the foul mud. The meaning is that from foul, evil soil can grow lotus flowers, pure lotus flowers, but you should take the lotus flower, not the foul mud. The meaning is that in appearance, his body was not qualified to teach Dharma, could not be compared with the monastic community or other true spiritual teachers. His body was like foul mud. The Dharma spoken from his mouth was like lotus flowers. You should take the lotus flower, but do not rely on his body. To show this point later in the latter half of his life, there were basically many controversies. To show that the sutras and treatises he translated should be correct then, approaching parinirvana, he also said, if my translations are correct, may my tongue not be burned. If they lack blessings and are not true, may it be burned. Later his tongue was never burned, which is universally recognized in history. So from these stories, in those days, in Han areas, some current analysts believe that Kumarajiva's manifestation at that time was demonstrating some transgressive behaviors as an accomplished being before sentient beings. There is also such a view. Some say it was to verify that his translations or teachings should be superior to others. There is also such a view, regardless of how it was. Here I have already explained to everyone whenever, according to the author's meaning, after relying on someone, no matter what kind of inappropriate behavior you see, you should observe with pure perception. But currently speaking, this is indeed a very big problem. Many people at the beginning don't observe properly and are very hasty. They don't know this person's background at all. They don't even know where he comes from. As long as someone comes calling himself some kind of guru, they immediately go to rely on him. And afterward, there may be many aspects where you can't just say, observe with pure perception, visualize as true Buddha. That probably won't work. Now in the eyes of us ordinary worldly people, some obviously inappropriate behaviors frequently appear. At that time one can say it's a dilemma, extremely difficult. If you continue to rely on him seeing some of his behaviors completely exposed in all aspects, you no longer have any way to rely on him, no longer have this confidence if you don't go. You've already heard the teachings, already received empowerments. So, in today's society, many Buddhists keep wondering and being confused about these issues, extremely difficult. Such phenomena are also quite common. So sometimes when they raise such practical life problems, it's hard to answer and hard to resolve. Now, telling him to give up won't work. Telling him not to give up and continue, indeed, this so-called guru might not just have small problems, but major problems. So how exactly to operate has certain difficulties. Such situations are often encountered in life. When observing, we also need to be clear, generally speaking, what the sutras and tantras mention. A spiritual teacher or guru who possesses all virtues completely. Reasonably speaking, we have also quoted many before from Ornament of the Mahayana Sutras and other texts like The Way of the Bodhisattva. In the Tantras, we have previously explained in the 50 verses of Guru devotion. Some Tantras are also quoted. The Vajra Garland Tantra, Tantra of the Ornament of the Vajra Essence, and other Tantras. And in Finding Rest in the Nature of the Mind, many are quoted scriptural quotations from sutras and tantras. Reasonably speaking, all virtues should be complete. If you rely on a Hinayana guru, Mahayana guru, or Vajrayana guru, each has different requirements. For example, What are the qualifications for a university professor? What are the qualifications for an elementary school teacher? All are explained very clearly. Reasonably, all these should be possessed. Especially possessing bodhicitta in the mind stream is a necessary condition. Among all qualifications, ultimately bodhicitta is very important. In summary, observing a guru can ultimately be encompassed in observing whether he possesses bodhicitta, this one condition. When we need to observe, all conditions can actually be summarized as whether the guru you rely on possesses bodhicitta or not. This is the most crucial point. If his mind stream possesses bodhicitta, then from now on, it's impossible not to accomplish all benefits for disciples in this and future lives. The Dharma this guru transmits is also intimately connected with the Mahayana. In any case, he will lead all disciples onto the right path. If you can truly observe that this guru possesses bodhicitta, it's truly like this. He cannot possibly not accomplish disciples' benefits in this and future lives. The Dharma he transmits will definitely be Mahayana teachings that benefit all sentient beings. It will be intimately connected, regardless of all his behaviors, words, and actions. All are a path for leading these disciples onto the path of liberation. Other than this, it's simply impossible for him. Such a person can be relied upon without doubt. The Sutra of the Great Heap of Jewels also says, "One with bodhicitta should be approached, for he is praised by all the wise." We can approach a person who possesses bodhicitta, and he will be praised by all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and all wise ones in the world. Previously, in Water Tree treatises, it was also mentioned that around a person with compassion, many people with karmic connections gather. The meaning should be roughly like this. There are many such sayings. Therefore, if this guru truly has altruistic bodhicitta in his mind stream, then all qualifications are possessed and you can rely on him. As long as it's a guru who doesn't possess bodhicitta, he will inevitably have selfish involvements. Conversely, if he doesn't possess bodhicitta, then he definitely has selfish and self-benefiting attachments. In this way, it's also impossible to properly tame disciples' mind streams. No matter how profound or subtle the Dharma he transmits, no matter how flowery his explanations, in the end, it all just falls within the circle of worldly benefits. This should be the case. If this guru doesn't possess bodhicitta, not possessing bodhicitta, because the fundamental problem is the 8 worldly concerns, and selfish mind have already bound him, then superficially he might give empowerments, he might transmit the deepest teachings, he gives you the deepest pith, instructions, but actually the guru himself fundamentally has no, not to mention true bodhicitta, not even an altruistic mind. No matter how much you teach such a person, temporarily he might listen, but actually the disciple's mind stream cannot possibly receive true benefit. Such a guru is like a venomous snake and should first be avoided. Do not befriend inferior people. Upon seeing the dishonest, having seen them, stay far away, like avoiding a venomous snake. This is also taught in the Sutra of the Great Heap of Jewels. We should not associate with such extremely inferior people. After seeing them, we should stay away, like avoiding venomous snakes. Why? In our worldly life, some people have selfish minds. All is for achieving their own purposes. In front of others, they speak flowery words. In front of many people, talking about their various merits, this merit and that merit. But what is their ultimate purpose? It's to protect themselves, promote themselves, praise themselves. Other than this, there's nothing else. Not to mention the great matter of disciples' liberation from life and death. They might not even have the temporary wish to help when these disciples and other beings truly encounter difficulties. He doesn't hear or ask about them. What use is it for us to rely on such a person? Absolutely no use. So everyone must remember this passage by Patrul Rinpoche. In our process of relying, if we find someone who truly possesses bodhicitta, that is to say, a bodhisattva with such bodhisattva mind, then anytime, anywhere, everyone will rely on him. Because a person with altruistic mind, no matter where he is, everyone will welcome him. Having a selfish mind, no matter where. At the beginning, everyone might approach him when not understanding him. Everyone has some good impressions of him. But gradually, slowly, time reveals a person's heart. Distance tests a horse's strength. Slowly it becomes apparent what he's thinking in his heart will be seen. His behaviors will also slowly finally reveal many of his own matters. At this time, everyone should feel, not to mention being a guru, he doesn't even possess the qualifications of a disciple. This will become clear. So in the future, whether the Dharma teachers among us or some who are not Dharma teachers now, but in the future I think will also be many outstanding Dharma teachers are definitely among those listening to the Dharma. Some are rather hidden yogis who now appear as quite ordinary monks or lay practitioners, but in the future, when their many Dharma propagation activities unfold, everyone will respect and honor them greatly. But when respecting them, the only thing is they have an altruistic mind. This is the most crucial. We can say it 100 times, 1,000 times. If there's truly an altruistic mind from the heart, there won't necessarily be many controversies about him. Even if there are, these controversies will all disappear at a certain time, because he himself has no concepts of self-protection and self-preservation. All his mind and actions are for benefiting others, just like our former guru, Rinpoche. During Guru Rinpoche's Dharma propagation activities, there were also some people who didn't understand and some who slandered, but after a period of time, all these disappeared like smoke and clouds. Nothing remained. Finally, like the bright sun appearing among clouds, Guru Rinpoche's Dharma propagation activities continuously illuminate the entire world. This is not just Guru Rinpoche alone. In our world, whether in Tibetan areas or Han areas. Many great masters' biographies and life stories are all like this. Even we ordinary people without fame, many people's practice and behavior also emanate from altruistic minds. So why does the author here summarize all qualifications into bodhicitta? We rely on people who possess bodhicitta. If they don't possess bodhicitta, no matter what kind of teachings they give, whether tantric or sutra teachings, whatever it might only plant seeds of virtue, true transformation of disciples' mind streams is very difficult, because as a Dharma teacher or guru, if he himself doesn't have altruistic mind, bodhicitta, or compassion in his heart, then for disciples to obtain this in their mind streams is very difficult. So bodhicitta is difficult, extremely difficult. We all know why it's called bodhicitta. The foundation of bodhicitta is the four immeasurables, the extensive explanation of the four immeasurables, boundless loving kindness, boundless compassion, among these one or two. I often think about our so-called loving kindness and compassion now cannot be called immeasurable at all. It's just similar. When I see a sentient being, I just think about it briefly. Compassion, compassion, pitiful, pitiful, like this. But actually, true immeasurable mind, look at great boundless compassion. Our current great compassion is not immeasurable. It's limited. Immeasurable means limitless. What is our current great compassion? We see pitiful beings and want them to obtain happiness. Obtaining happiness is the characteristic of loving kindness. In this case, when my relatives, my parents, my loved ones get sick, I immediately think in my heart, quickly let him get better, get better. This is limited, not immeasurable. I might want my relatives to get better, but afterward, when I see any other being, will it be exactly the same as toward my mother? If it's not exactly the same, it shows my great compassion is not immeasurable mind, but limited. It's only within a small scope. My compassion is only within my family circle. My compassion is only within my relatives' circle, or only within the circle of humanity. How can this be called immeasurable mind? If immeasurable mind hasn't even arisen, the source of bodhicitta is the four immeasurables. When we practice, we also begin with the four immeasurables. So sometimes, when I think about it, when others ask if you possess bodhicitta, I don't have it at all. Why? Current, great, boundless compassion and boundless loving kindness. Now, not to mention immeasurable mind, even the limited mind is hard to generate. Sometimes even measurable mind is hard to generate, not to mention immeasurable mind. So truly, being a guru who possesses bodhicitta is not easy. Other things, if a guru wears better clothes, or some gurus abroad, especially like in America and the West, they used to have sayings before gurus should look better, wear better clothes. I think in this case it's easier to be one, nothing special, because as a guru he definitely has some money. If every day he changes into better, more high-end clothes, if this is the qualification of a guru, it's quite easy to be one. Every day being a bit better, then finding some disciples. Can you buy me a nice-looking outfit today? Each time, teaching Dharma, wearing different colors. This isn't so difficult, but to truly possess bodhicitta in one's mind stream, not to mention others, each person can know by thinking for themselves. So why does Patrul Rinpoche say here, if one truly possesses bodhicitta, then this guru's every action is entirely for benefiting beings. Therefore, all key points of observing a guru can be condensed into observing whether he possesses bodhicitta, this one condition. If his mind stream is filled with bodhicitta, then regardless of his appearance, he should be relied upon. Whether he appears as a householder or a monastic, even if he wears tattered clothes, whatever appearance he has, if he teaches Dharma daily while holding a bottle of Wuliangye liquor on his throne and drinking while teaching, if such a person has bodhicitta, we can accept any behavior from them, and we should rely on such masters, whatever clothes he wears, sometimes dressing as a householder, sometimes in monastic robes, or even like Dukyense Yeshe Dorje, who would hold a gun and fire bang bang among his disciples. Immediately, all beings connected with him would realize selflessness and emptiness in their mind streams. Such behavior is also acceptable and should be accepted. But if there's no bodhicitta in their mind stream, even the highest throne is useless, no matter how many ceremonial scarves are offered to them, or however much money they accumulate, it's all useless. Many wealthy people in the West now have plenty of money, but that means nothing. This is not the true mark of a guru. The key is whether they have genuine altruistic intention. This altruistic mind is not a superficial one, saying, oh, these sentient beings are so pitiful, may all beings attain Buddhahood. On the surface they speak beautifully, and their recitations sound wonderful. With eyes closed they appear especially gentle and compassionate, but whether they truly have this in their hearts is hard to say. People can be very cunning sometimes, so it's difficult to tell if their mind stream lacks bodhicitta, even if they superficially show renunciation, disgust with samsara, and dedicated practice, sitting in meditation daily with eyes closed with impeccable conduct, especially those who study Vinaya and precepts. They walk very slowly, afraid there might be small insects on the path. They don't even dare to look. Very careful about not eating after noon, with exceptionally pure conduct. This is indeed one form of conduct in Buddha Shakyamuni's precepts. But if we truly want to rely on someone, we shouldn't merely learn their outward conduct. It's not about imitating their physical behavior. We should receive the Guru's qualities from our hearts. The Guru's main qualities are their inner realization and altruistic bodhicitta. So this is useless and impossible to rely upon. No matter how good your conduct is, it's only superficial cultivation. Many people nowadays rely on teachers based only on appearances. So many people probably haven't considered the genuine inner bodhicitta, but for those great masters whose mind streams contain hidden and unmanifest qualities, we ordinary people, no matter how we observe, cannot understand their extraordinary qualities. Moreover, most fraudsters are highly skilled at pretending and deceiving. The phenomenon of impersonating saints to deceive people exists everywhere, so for us to truly distinguish between authentic and fake, right and wrong, is extremely difficult. We ordinary people cannot tell from the outside who are the true great masters, and often some fraudsters and pretenders act very convincingly in front of others. There's an old story from Tibetan areas. A family would recite the perfection of wisdom in 8,000 lines every year. Once they invited a monk to recite the perfection of wisdom in 8,000 lines, but this monk couldn't recite it at all. He was a fraud, seeing that the householders probably couldn't read and he couldn't read either. He pretended to recite on the surface. In their home there was an elderly woman, an old lady. She slowly came down with her walking stick, prostrated 3 times before him, and listened attentively. Later at mealtime, she respectfully asked the monk. She said, "Since I was young, our family has continuously recited this sutra every year. Every month we regularly recite this scripture, but I often hear Rabchung, Rabchung. Rabchung means subhuti in the perfection of wisdom in 8,000 lines. But in the sutra you're reciting, why can't I hear Rabchung at all?" I can't hear Subhuti at all. I keep not hearing Subhuti. Why is this? The monk gave a smooth response. Oh yes, dear Bodhisattva. Right away, after I finish eating, I'll be reciting the verses about Subhuti. Don't worry, it's coming soon. After a while, he pretended to recite a verse saying Subhuti, Subhuti, and then Subhuti, Subhuti again. After this recitation, the old lady was completely satisfied. Oh, so that's how it is. Yes, I was mistaken. You hadn't reached that part yet. Oh, fine, now I'm satisfied. Then she got up with her walking stick, holding her prayer beads, and returned to her bed, continuously reciting. This is historical. So sometimes in our world there are good spiritual teachers and monastics, but there are also some who observe others. We've often encountered such people. Some people observe what others like. What others most enjoy hearing, some are particularly clever. When they understand others' key points, they immediately display characteristics in that area, claiming their lineage in that area is flawless. Some people, when they hear someone has faith in a particular teacher, hearing of this faith in that teacher, oh, that teacher and I have an extremely close relationship. He and I have such and such relationship. You don't know how close we are. So nowadays, many people who pretend like this are quite numerous. We should be careful. Of course, some people here might find this quite difficult. How can we observe whether someone truly possesses bodhicitta? The words of my perfect teacher doesn't explain this much, but actually, as the Sutra of the 10 Levels explains, we observe fire's existence through smoke, using inference through water birds. We can also infer the existence of rivers through other signs of Dharma propagation and benefiting beings. We can know the activities of bodhisattvas who have attained enlightenment. It should be like this. So through reasoning, we should generally know who has bodhicitta and who doesn't. But I think when relying on a guru, it's best to choose one who is generally recognized, not necessarily famous, but truly beneficial to beings. Generally recognized teachers are probably better. Some teachers have previously taught about how to examine spiritual friends. First, make inquiries from a distance. Then go near to understand the people around them and their activities. Then further investigate. Understand everything about this person's actions, deeds, thoughts, and contemplations. But there's also a difficulty in this process of understanding. Some teachers, if they consider you a destined disciple, will easily say, how about I give you a teaching right now? Come here, gather everyone. I'm going to give empowerment. Then it becomes difficult for the disciple to leave at that point. I've heard some people who don't want to receive empowerment immediately go to the restroom, but staying there for such a long time is also difficult. Waiting all the time is also somewhat difficult. So here it explains, therefore, relying on a teacher with whom you have karmic connections throughout lifetimes is very important. Patrul Rinpoche's meaning here is, finding someone with bodhicitta is quite difficult. Feeling which teacher you have a connection with is very important. So what is a teacher with karmic connection like? How do we determine a teacher with whom we have karmic affinity? If you meet a certain teacher, or hear his words, or even just hearing his name causes all your body hair to stand on end, you become extremely moved, generate incomparable faith, and your state of mind suddenly transforms. This indicates he is your teacher from lifetime to lifetime. No observation is needed. Nowadays, this might be quite common. Many people initially, even towards some not very qualified teachers, some people initially say, oh, teacher, when I saw you, I had a different feeling. Are you my teacher from lifetime to lifetime? All the hair on my entire body stood up, tears streamed down. My whole body trembled in waves. Many people say this. However, truly, some people through different karmic connections from past lives, upon hearing certain teachers' names, seeing their faces or hearing their voices, at that moment they are completely transformed. But I think some people nowadays still need careful observation in this regard. Otherwise, I've seen many people before, when they first encountered this teacher, they were mutually excited. For a period, their emotions couldn't calm down, but after some time, they started suing each other, hearing many unpleasant news. This is not very good. The great masters of previous generations, When they first relied on teachers, they also had great faith. When they finally achieved realization, it remained unchanged. So in these aspects, detailed observation might be necessary. It's said that Master Rongton Laga once told Milarepa, "This story is below, and here it's briefly explained. Your teacher from lifetime to lifetime is the noble great translator, Marpa, living at Trowolong Monastery in the south." Lotsawa actually means translator, Marpa Lotsawa. You should go south to rely on him. When Milarepa merely heard Marpa's name, extraordinary faith arose spontaneously, and he secretly resolved, even if I encounter life-threatening danger, I must meet the teacher and uphold the teacher's intention. He made this resolution. Later, when he personally went to meet the teacher, when he went, he couldn't find him at first. He inquired everywhere, asking many people where Translator Marpa was. They said they didn't know Translator Marpa, but there was someone called Marpa. When he went there to inquire, apparently, as will be explained later, he met Marpa Lotsawa's son. His son was wearing particularly fine clothes when he first met him. After meeting him, when Milarepa asked, he said, "Today, my father seems to be appearing in the form of a farmer. I don't know why, either. Usually he never does such farming work. Moreover, he sold all his family property to go to India to seek Dharma. Later, he found many palm leaf manuscripts and brought them here. Hearing this, he joyfully searched. At that time, Marpa Lotsawa also appeared in farmer's form. When he found him and went to meet him, Marpa Lotsawa received him in the appearance of a farming peasant. When the teacher and disciple met on the path, although Milarepa didn't recognize the teacher at that time, there were probably many farmers in the fields then. He was sturdy, with large eyes and penetrating gaze, such a particularly robust person. The moment he saw him, instantly his sharp, discriminating thoughts completely disappeared without a trace. He stood there motionless in a daze. When he saw the teacher, he kept looking at him. His eyes never blinked. Marpa Lotsawa had a decent temper. Otherwise he might have said, "What are you staring at? Is there a problem?" At that moment, because his discriminating thoughts were powerless, he had already realized, generally speaking, encountering such a teacher is closely related to the purity of one's own mind and karmic force from past lives. Therefore, regarding one's teacher who transmits authentic Dharma and pith instructions, no matter what he's like, we should strive to achieve this, never departing from the thought he is truly a Buddha. We should regard him as a true Buddha. Actually, Buddha's biographies also mention this. Buddha appeared in human form, and even when Buddha was present to tame Angulimala, he appeared as a monk at that time to tame someone called Gandharva. He appeared as a universal monarch, with Maudgalyayana appearing as a minister, and to tame the king of Gandharvas. He also manifested in Gandharva form. Such manifestations occur. If we ourselves lack karmic connections from past lives, we won't have the fortune to meet excellent teachers. If our own minds are impure, then even when meeting a true Buddha, it's impossible to see him as one with qualities. The Sutra on the ocean-like samadhi of the visualization of the Buddha explains this. At that time, 500 people from the Sakya clan saw Buddha Shakyamuni as particularly ugly, with a body black like coal, and 1,000 monks saw Buddha Shakyamuni as someone like red earth. What was the reason for this? Actually, the Sakya people had slandered Buddha in past lives. This was the karmic result of slandering Buddha with evil intent. As for the 1,000 monks, in past lives they also had doubts and wrong views toward Dharma and teachers. This is what's said. Therefore, meeting a teacher from whom you received Dharma kindness in past lives, this point is quite important. If there was Dharma kindness from a teacher before, in this life too, you will have pure perception toward him. In the process of relying on a teacher, you must disregard all difficulties like cold, heat, hunger, and thirst. Follow the teacher's instructions and pray with full faith and reverence. Actually, praying to the Guru is very important. All the qualities in the Guru's mind stream. Just like when we practice Guru Yoga daily, if they merge into our own mind stream through this power of interdependence, gradually our mind will become capable and tamed. All our temporary actions should be requested from the Guru. Whatever the Guru instructs, we should do accordingly and truthfully. We must rely on the Guru with the sincere faith of, "Only you know my mind." definitely with the faith that I rely entirely on you, even if the guru doesn't teach Dharma every day. Teaching once or twice is also acceptable. There was once a historically very famous master called Dampa Deshek. Once during his empowerment, several people came from outside, 3 practitioners dressed in tatters like beggars. When the 3 practitioners first arrived, the Dharma hall where the teacher was teaching was already packed with people. There was no way in. Inside the entire courtyard wall, people were completely packed. Later, the 3 of them had no choice but to climb a tree across the way. They climbed up that tree to listen. They received empowerment and teachings only from high up in the tree, climbing up there to listen. As a result, after the teacher finished teaching, none of the people inside realized, but the 3 people in the tree had already awakened. So if you have faith, no matter what the circumstances, even climbing a tree to listen is acceptable without faith. No matter how close you sit to the guru, it's useless. I'm not saying that those sitting relatively close, you don't need to hang your heads in the middle of relying. Where were we? Should I continue? Let me speak a little more. I've already elaborated too much earlier, so I can't catch up later. That's not good. The so-called final practice of studying the guru's conduct means, after carefully observing all the actions of the excellent guru in one's actual practice, one should practice exactly according to that model. Whatever the guru is like, one should practice exactly according to those qualities of the guru. There's also such a saying in the world, everything is imitation, and skill is born from imitation. Such a common saying, everything in the world is imitation, including our current scientific development. China now imitates America and Japan, and now their own domestic products are quite good too. It's said that in 20 more years they'll be the same as America. Some say they'll even surpass America, but that's probably impossible. As practitioners, we should emulate the behavior of past Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Disciples relying on gurus similarly follow the guru's example. Actually, it's all a kind of imitation in our worldly context. Practice is also like this. Whatever the guru's intention and conduct are, disciples need to obtain them in their mind stream, just like small divine statues taken from a mold. Whatever patterns and designs are in the mold will all appear on that small divine statue, tsatsa statues for tsatsa statues. Whatever patterns are in that mold, even the slightest flaw, what you print will also be like that. Many products made in factories nowadays are also like this. Actually, if a true guru has compassion and wisdom, whatever kind of conduct they have, logically speaking, disciples should also obtain all the guru's intention exactly as it is. Similarly, whatever qualities exist in the guru's mind stream, disciples should also be exactly the same as the guru. Even if they can't be completely identical, they must have basically the same virtues. If the guru is like a Buddha, with great compassion and wisdom that are extremely supreme, but the disciple lacks everything and instead possesses many evil actions that cannot be called the guru's disciple. So in the Great Perfection lineage, as well as in Chan Buddhism, there's often mind-to-mind transmission, continuous transmission through mind. When the 5th Patriarch transmitted the Diamond Sutra to the 6th Patriarch, he also awakened from a verse. And when he awakened, he said, "How wonderful that self-nature is originally pure. How wonderful that self-nature is originally unborn and undying, originally complete. How wonderful that self-nature is originally unwavering, that self-nature can give birth to all phenomena," and so on. He spoke of many things, but actually all of these were qualities in the guru's mind stream that the disciple had directly obtained. There was once someone called Fachang. When he met Mazu, he asked, "What is Buddha?" The teacher answered him, "Mind itself is Buddha," and he awakened immediately. Later, many years afterward, when it was confirmed it was indivisible from the guru's secret mind and intention. So why is it that after we practice guru yoga, our discriminating thoughts rest in the state indivisible from the guru's wisdom? If some people really can't visualize, they can just think in their minds. What I'm thinking and visualizing now is the guru's secret mind. Thinking this way, actually when we think of the guru in our discriminating thoughts, this is the guru's secret mind. In relatively simple terms, it can also be summarized this way. So here, for us, actually there should be many more principles worth elaborating, but in simple language, it's like this. I hope that in these Vajra words, there are still many principles worth explaining. Here, due to time constraints, I may have explained some principles too extensively, which may not be necessary. I hope you all privately should read more of the original text of the words of my perfect teacher, because the commentary is quite extensive. When it comes out later, it might be over 10 books for you to read them one by one in this degenerate age. Whether you'll have the time, I dare not say. But the words of my perfect teacher is one book. I think reading it once a year, once every 2 years, or once every 10 years shouldn't be very difficult. Alright, let's stop here.
Bandara Bana Sodargye Bandara Bana Sodargye Bandara Bana Sodargye